Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, and that's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. This is your Wednesday pod. Later on this afternoon at noon, we'll be going live on YouTube, and we'll be talking Big Ten quarterbacks. The goal, we're all three going to come with our different list of who we think the 5 best quarterbacks are in the Big Ten and why. And we have to have, we're going to talk about, criteria for why. It can't just be because I think that guy looks good. Like, no, what's your criteria? And we're also going to discuss whether or not we think the Big Ten is the best quarterback conference in college football right now, because I do think there's at least 2 other conferences who can make a really strong case. I think the Big 12 and the SEC probably. ACC, I think coming into the year probably had a strong case, and then they started playing football, and then we remember that it's the Atlantic Coastal Conference. And so, at the football thing. But for right now, we talked with Ryan Day Tuesday afternoon as Ohio State prepares to play Minnesota on Saturday, and what's going to be their only home game in the next month. We're about to be on the road, man. You guys ready? Buckeye Talk on the road? You ready to say goodbye to your homes for the next couple of weekends after this?
Can't wait. Yeah. No, but yeah, I guess I have to be. Like, the funny part is I'm not even going to be at the Illinois game, but like I'm actually traveling further than you guys are for that weekend. My cousin's getting married, so I'm going to that wedding. And you guys are traveling, I think, 5 hours, and I think I'm going 7. So I'm just going the opposite direction than Illinois.
And listen, I love Madison, Wisconsin. Let me get out front and say I think it's one of the best college towns in the Big Ten, if not the best college town in the Big Ten. There was one point where I was walking through Seattle thinking to myself, what's left on the schedule is West Lafayette, Champaign, Illinois, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Ann Arbor, Michigan in late November.
So
I was going to say they're not at the most peak times of year.
I'll say that I think Seattle and Columbus are more major city than college town. So right. I don't even put them in the category of like, oh, what's the best college town? Because you have normal things to do outside of the fall months, right? Because I go to Seattle anytime. You guys enjoyed Seattle, right? Seattle's fun.
Yeah. But I wouldn't. Seattle.
I would go back even if it wasn't to watch a college football game. I would go to Seattle in April or something like that. And same thing with Columbus. Ann Arbor, Madison, Champaign, State College. Why are you there on April 2nd? What are you doing?
I remember we were standing in line for. I remember first off, I think I tweeted this before the game that how I was very glad that the Pac-12 merged basically. But I remember I told Stefan when we were in Seattle, I was like, yeah, I don't want to live out here. I don't think I could. It's too far away from everything. And then I think we were standing in line for the Space Needle, and I went, you know what, Stefan? I think I could live out here. Actually, this city's great.
I think if we were from the West Coast, I could live there. But I'm from the Midwest. My entire family would be on an entirely different time zone than me, and so that's the only reason I wouldn't live in Seattle. Because LA, you're just kind of in the mix a little bit more. Seattle is very much out the way. It's beautiful out there, though. It's beautiful. It's just very much out the way.
It's no West Lafayette in November, though.
Yeah, it's no West Lafayette in November, though. It's not going to get you up like that. Well, we talked with Ryan Day ahead of Ohio State's game against Minnesota, which is another fake college town because Minneapolis is a beautiful city. I hope you guys. When do they go to Minnesota? Because they've played Minnesota 3 times and they keep getting them at home. I don't know, but it's one.
I'll have an answer for you in a minute. I'm Googling.
Okay, cool. I'm going to filibuster until you find that answer because I don't want to come back to this. I want to end this so we can talk about special teams Because that's what also is special. Is the teams. You have the answer yet, Andrew? This is
No, it's not.
this
It's
is
not
terrible.
2027.
Okay, so 2 more years.
In
2 more
2027,
years.
it's at Michigan, at Minnesota, at Northwestern, at Oregon, at Rutgers. That's a great weekend. We get the Michigan game, Minneapolis.
at-
Yes, Michigan. We go to Ann Arbor, so that's whatever. Minneapolis, I've heard nothing but great things about Minneapolis. Northwestern is Chicago. I think their new stadium will be ready by then. Oregon. I think we all enjoyed that trip. And then Rutgers. We get to go to New York City if you want, or you could just stay in Piscataway.
That's a lot of flying. That's a lot of
It's
flying.
a lot of flying. My United credit card, I am going to have some miles.
That is a lot of flying. Okay, nobody cares. These are journalism problems. Nobody cares about these problems. Anyway, they do care about the special teams problems. Brandon Inniss had a really good punt return, and then he fumbled it. And Stefan, it doesn't sound like that's I'm not going to say it's not a big deal. Like, right, you turn the ball over. You can't turn the ball over. But it doesn't sound like, from Ryan Day's perspective, Brandon Inniss has done anything over the past 4 weeks that suggests he shouldn't be the punt returner, which is on the contrary to, I think, the way that people in the media and maybe some of the fans feel. Right?
Yeah, I think Ryan Day looked on the positive side. When talking about the punt return game, specifically with Brandon Inniss, he talked about how the return before the fumble was good, and then he fumbled. And he talked about how there was a good return against Ohio that he liked. And, to Brandon Innis's credit, something we talked about, after week 1 and week 2 was the hidden yards, right? And not fielding punts and letting them bounce. There hasn't been a ton of that against Ohio and Washington. I don't know if any of us are, overly concerned about Brandon Inniss being a ball security problem, right? So if you feel like the fumble was kind of a one-off, then, that's its own thing. And I go back and forth on how I feel about it, because I think, Day kind of walked this fine line of a balance of, there's a lot of good. You have to acknowledge the good, but you also have to acknowledge the bad. And maybe you find this middle ground where they still trust Brandon Inniss and they think that the mistakes are kind of anomalies and they'll get themselves straightened out. Listen, if you're a fan, I get it. I probably agree with you in some ways of, even if it's one problem here, one problem here, one problem here, like, it's not like a repeat thing over and over again of the same thing happening over and over again. It's still kind of annoying because you're like, well, the problems aren't going away, right? Like, you just want it to be clean. And I don't care if all these issues feel like one-offs. I want there to be no issues at all. So I get that perspective of a fan or just anybody critiquing the punt return unit with Brandon Inniss back there. But I do also understand Ryan Day's perspective where he said, if Brandon Inniss doesn't fumble, nobody's questioning Brandon Inniss being back there. So it's like, two things can be true, I guess. Like, that was a great return, but also things just keep happening in the punt return unit when he's back there. And at some point, do you just make a change because you feel like it's time to make a change? I don't know the answer to it. I think all three of us are in agreement that if it was the biggest punt return of Ohio State's season happening right now, who would you want back there? We'd all say Caleb Downs. He's sure-handed. He's explosive. He can do a lot of different things because he's done a lot of different things in a punt return unit in his career, including last year against Indiana. But they want Brandon back there, clearly. I don't think putting someone like JJ back there is really an option because you don't want to give him more hits.
Please don't.
What was that?
Please don't.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of the same applies to Caleb Downs. I mean, the guy led you in snaps last year, if I'm not mistaken. I get it. But at the same time, the mistakes just keep happening. And maybe it's just a bad vibes thing. Hey, change it because the vibes aren't good. I don't know. Because something's just off in a punt return unit. There's always something coming up. And Ohio State's kind of hell-bent on, we'll fix it with what we've got.
And if we're about anything here at Buckeye Talk, we're about the vibes. Most importantly. Everything else comes second to the vibes.
If nothing else, we'll bring you the vibes.
We'll bring you the vibes at all costs. Andrew, I'm interested to see if we see Caleb Downs back there. I don't think we're going to see it this weekend. Because why do you need to have Caleb Downs back there against Minnesota? Illinois, maybe, because that's probably going to be a ranked game. Penn State, probably. Michigan,
Wisconsin.
probably.
Well, I see what you're doing.
Let me push back. Let me push back real quick, though. Go ahead. Because we all predicted a blowout in Seattle, and I'm sure there's going to be some blowouts predicted for this game against Minnesota.
Sure.
With Ohio State playing offense the way that they're playing, and let's say against Minnesota they get eight or nine possessions as opposed to the 7 that they got against Washington, it doesn't matter how quality or not quality the opponent is. If you're only got 8 possessions, you can't risk a whole lot in opponent unit, regardless of who you're playing.
Was it not a blowout against Washington?
I don't think it was until like the fourth quarter to like the last kind of few minutes there.
Yeah, until Jaden Fielding's last field goal, it was still a 2-possession game.
So the score was not a blowout. But Ryan Day said they had 16 plays of 62 plays that were of at least 10 yards. And he said they had 25 plays that were at least 8 yards. That's 26% of their plays went for 10 plus yards. 40% of their plays went for 8 plus yards. And we just talked to Ryan Day, so maybe I'm looking at some things differently. I'm doing the thing you guys joked and said I do on Saturdays, where I start out hot and then I gradually throughout the week get cooler and cooler and cooler, just to get ramped right back up every Saturday. So maybe this is a me problem. Ohio State had 6 possessions because they had 1 possession where they held on to the ball for 8 minutes and decided before they scored, right? They got slower to start off the second half, but also Brandon has fumbled what was key field position. Did you think, so here's their time of possession per drive. 8 minutes and 40 seconds, turnover on downs on a 4th and 1, where otherwise they would have scored. And then their next one was 10 minutes and 36 seconds, and they punt it. And then they had a 1-minute drive to close out the first half when they scored the touchdown, when they finally started going up tempo and acting like they were the offense they were supposed to be. And then they slowed right back down. Next drive where they scored their second touchdown of the game, 7 minutes and 19 seconds. Then when they had the field goal, that made it a 17-6 lead, I believe, 13 minutes and 19 seconds. And then on their final touchdown drive, 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Like, they're playing slower. They're to the point of, like, is the offense playing? I don't think the offense is playing bad. I don't think Washington stopped Ohio State. I think Ohio State decided we don't need to do more than this to win the football game. And it doesn't take away from your point of, if you're only going to have 6 possessions in a game, you can't fumble your 7th possession away. I agree with you with that. But there's an element with the offense right now of doing what is necessary while working on what needs to be worked on. And that's the way Ryan Day talked about things on Tuesday when I asked him like 2 different questions about like, hey, your defense is awesome. Does that mean your offense can kind of chill? No, Steven, it can't chill. How dare you say that to me? I'm stressed out right now in my button-up shirt. Meanwhile, PJ Fleck is all chest out. But from the special teams perspective, before we move completely into the offensive part of this, Andrew, I don't know if the offense is as bad as maybe I thought it was. It's not as good as it needs to be, obviously, but I don't know if Brandon Inniss cost them a 7th possession against Washington doesn't mean that the offense didn't do whatever it wanted to do. It just chose to not do it more. Because then maybe some of that is road game. You're up by 3 scores. We don't really need to do much else. But I just don't think we're going to see Caleb Downs back at punt returner unless they're playing a matchup game. And maybe the Illinois game is a matchup game. Maybe it's not. And Penn State, even if none of us think Penn State can win that game, it is a matchup game. And then the Michigan game will be a matchup game. And we saw Caleb Downs back there in the playoff. But other than that, Brandon Inniss fumbled, so we're talking about it. He's cleaned up the empty yards conversation. And now if he holds on to the football, it doesn't sound like people have a problem with him. It's just he fumbled, and that's on top of everything else he did. So I think all these issues have compiled to the point where maybe we're making a big issue out of something that may or may not be a big issue. And I don't even know if what I said makes any sense.
No, like it is interesting kind of how they do it. Like Ryan Day has talked so much for these last 2 years about like keeping snap counts down and making sure players are fresh and making sure players are ready to go for the end of the year. So like I get the idea of like having Caleb Downs back there in the right moment, but not in a particular situation, because like there are YouTube compilations that you can go look up of biggest football hits, and like half of them are punt returners running up to go catch a ball and just getting absolutely drilled. And I don't know if you want to do that in the wrong situation. Like my favorite movie, Friday Night Lights, Boobie Miles got hurt when the game was like 42-0.
That was on Boobie, though. Nobody told him to go in the game. He did that himself.
No, Chris Comer forgot his helmet. He didn't know where his helmet was, and that's why he went in the game, which isn't the way it happened in real life, but it's the movie, so the movie's true. I think that like you don't want Caleb to go out there when it's the thing that I've been trying to think of too is like you don't want Caleb to go out there when it's 24-0 against Minnesota in the first drive of the third quarter and Minnesota's punting to you. And then it's like, okay, well, if he gets drilled or if he takes 2 unnecessary hits that he doesn't need to take, like, do you really want to do that? But then you also want him to get reps to where it's not, hey, we're beating Penn State 17-10 and we're trying to put the game away late. Caleb, go punt return for the first time since Nam. Like that's not the way to do it. So I've kind of been going back and forth on how you do it, but I do agree that there is kind of a pecking order there, and I think it's kind of when you need it, you need him out there, and when you don't, you don't. And it's just kind of a look thing, and it's just kind of a feel thing for Ryan Day. If you need to spark offensively, if you need something to show up, whether that's Illinois, whether that's Penn State, whether that's Michigan, whether that's some other place, I don't know, but that needs to be the moment for Caleb.
Can I ask Stefan you a question? Because the Caleb Downs thing feels like it's a ceiling conversation of like, oh, Caleb Downs, if you put him back there, he might get points. Somebody pointed out in our text, 614-350-3315, I think like Sunday afternoon or something like that Caleb also muffed a punt against Tennessee. So he's not perfect either, but he also, you're pairing that with, at 2 different schools in 2 different seasons, Caleb Downs has taken a punt return to the house. So it's like, okay, you muffed one of them, but then you took 2 of them to the house. So 2-1, I'll take those odds. Do you trust Brandon
fully? Probably not yet.
And that's why you're talking the way you're talking.
Yeah, I think what kind of bugs me is like there's not one, like if it was just a hidden yards thing every time, I'd be like, all right, there's a glaring thing that needs to get fixed. If it was ball security every time, whether it's on offense or on punt returns, I'd say, okay, that's the thing that needs to get fixed. It's just you can't put your finger on it, but there's always something. There's always, one thing's right. It's the 1 step forward, 2 steps back thing, I guess, for lack of a better analogy.
Because even, if he doesn't fumble, he did, right? So
that was my problem with what Dave was saying on Tuesday. Like, I don't know. You think the Colts are talking to Adonai Mitchell right now, being like, I mean, yeah, that was a sick 87-yard catch. Yeah, you fumbled that out of the back of the end zone and cost us 7 points in a game that we lost by 7. He actually ended up costing him 14 points, but you cost us those 7 points. Game you lost by 7. I don't think Will Howard was sitting on the sideline being like, that run against Penn State was sick. I know I fumbled out of the back of the end zone, but that fumble or that run was sick.
Will Howard was like
special teams. Special teams doesn't need to get special treatment. It's a fumble. He fumbled on the play. What was the return, like 30 yards or something? If JJ has a 30-yard catch and he fumbles, we're not going to be like, dang, that was a sick catch by Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point. Andrew, you've been here for 3 years, and we've been having special teams conversations about it not being special for 3 years. Maybe that phase of the game for Ohio State's just cursed. Did you ever think about that? Maybe it's just cursed. Maybe it's nobody's fault. It's just Mother Nature has decided Ohio State can't be good at special teams. But in all seriousness, Parker Fleming was a special teams coordinator for a long time. Well, not a long time. He was a special teams coordinator here for a couple of years. Rob Keyes is like technically the special teams coordinator. He's just not one of the 10 assistants no more. So Ryan Day is better maximizing his coaching staff now. But it also isn't just Rob Keyes who's running things. Rob Keyes is in charge of the entire operation, yes, but his main thing is the punt return. Matt Carreri handles the punt. Nate Ebner, from a long snapper at Ohio State, who then played for the Patriots for a long time, he handles the kickoff return. James Laurinaitis handles kickoff. Tyler Bowen handles field goal. And then a quality control special teams, Sam McGrath, handles the field goal for defense on that side. So he is who you credit for. I said it differently in the video, and you corrected me, Stefan. Sam McGrath is the person that people need to be crediting for why they were able to sniff out when Washington ran the fake field goal. Terrible fake field goal attempt, but Ohio State was ready for it, and Ryan Day even said so as much after the game. Regardless of, we know that, Andrew, they need to be better at special teams. I cannot believe they can't figure out special teams. But here we are. But do you at least like the way that they are approaching special teams in terms of splitting up the duties versus having one guy be in charge of it, if it means better maximizing your coaching staff? Is that part of it at least good? Or do you want them to bring Parker Fleming back?
But so here's the problem. When I showed up, you, me, and Nathan were talking about this where like it's every flipping week.
Every week.
It's every week there's a false start. There was a fake that gets run on them that they weren't ready for. It's a fake that they tried that they weren't ready for. It's just every week. And then it was like, you're Ohio State, and I think that was like back when, I think that was maybe the last year that they had like the coaching minimums of like you had 10 coaches and you couldn't have somebody out on the trail Steven, do you remember that where it was like you couldn't have Laurinaitis go out on the trail because
and it's still technically that you can only have 10 coaches out on the road, but you could have more coaches coaching on the field during practice.
Yeah, that was what it was. And I remember it was like how is Laurinaitis not on the trail because of this? But they had the special teams coordinator, and they had the guy at the top, and then you're like, all right, well, he's gonna coordinate some special teams, and then they didn't, and then you have this other situation where it's like, hey, James Laurinaitis is working with the kickoff team, which is great because a lot of those dudes are linebackers, and he's working hand in hand with those guys. Like he mentioned Tyler Bowen working with field goals, and like Tyler Bowen, he's coaching up offensive linemen because offensive linemen are the people who block on field goal and PATs. And like, punt return is this, and kick return is that. And he's just kind of going through the line. It's like, oh, well, it makes sense for Matt Guerrero to have this job because he's working with the guys that he coaches. And then like, it's still kind of dicey. And it just doesn't really, I don't know. I've seen, this is my third year here, and I've seen maybe there's a hidden third door that I'm somehow missing, but there seems to be two doors. Hire a special teams coordinator or having a group by committee, and we're still having some same conversations that we had a few years ago. So, like,
but I'll say it's at least it's not the whole
as bad as it was. I will say,
yeah. We're really just talking like Brandon Inniss has been weird on punt return for 4 weeks, and if he cleans that up, then maybe this isn't an issue here. I think that's what Ryan Day is saying is Brandon Inniss has been fine. He's just had a couple of mind blips, and if he just cleans up the mind blips, we're perfectly fine. Because even I know he got angry, Stefan, that Jaden Fielding had to have 2 tackles, but he even said it was just a weird fit. But in the same breath, he complimented Aaron Scott, and that for weeks. They had like 13 times that they have done that they've repped that in practice, and he was the first guy to get to the 30-yard line, which is essentially what you are on kickoff. You're racing to that 30-yard line, but you need to stay on your string. You need to stay in your fit, because if you don't, that's how kick returns for touchdowns happen, is because somebody wasn't where they were supposed to be. Aaron Scott lit somebody up on Saturday, but that was cool. But they had been seeing that happen for multiple weeks. And as a result, Aaron Scott might get more time on actual defense. So it's not just going to be, oh, Devin Sanchez has jumped Aaron Scott anymore. No. Aaron Scott is now doing things that make them feel comfortable creating a role for him over the next 2, because that's the point, right? You get on the field through special teams at Ohio State. So I don't think this is a special teams issue. I think this is a Brandon Inniss issue. And you're either going to be on the side of, I want to see somebody new back there, whether it's Bryson Rogers, whether it's JJ, whether it's putting Caleb Downs back there so he can be explosive, or you take Brian Day at his word and you say, okay, you're right, he fumbled, and if he doesn't fumble, everything's fine. And he's cleaned up the empty yardage thing. So maybe this is something that Brandon Inniss is working through, and I like the way Ryan Day handled it because he didn't try to protect one of his team captains who's in his 3rd year in the program and his 2nd year as a punt returner. Like, he just flat out said it. You need to hold on to the ball. And maybe that's enough for now. And if Brandon Inniss this weekend, we get through punt return and there's no fumbles, there's no empty yardage loss, it's just Andrew gave it a D in a video. If special teams gets to a C by the end of the weekend, then maybe we're done talking about this.
Be better in the red zone. And we don't have to talk about special teams as much.
Let's take a break and then let's talk about the red zone here on Buckeye Talk.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
For a limited time at McDonald's, get a Big Mac extra value meal for $8. That means 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, and medium fries, and a drink. We may need to change that jingle.
Prices and participation may vary.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contrast. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. What a response. Be better in the red zone. Ryan Day, Stefan, said the goal is 75% of their red zone trips end in a touchdown. Right now, they are at 65%, which is 62nd nationally. And there are 25 teams in the country who are, as of 4 or 5 games in, which is what most teams have played, achieving what Ryan Day wants to achieve of 75% or higher on red zone percent, complete touchdowns. Here's every year. I gave this to these guys before we get on the pod, so if you guys want to just like go do something else, as I tell the listeners of this, have at it, because I know I'm just repeating myself to you guys, but they don't know this. Since Ryan Day got here in 2017, Ohio State has achieved that 75% touchdown in the red zone percentage twice, and they were right on the border another time. In 2017, when he first got here, they were at 66.18%. That was 36 nationally, and there were 11 teams that year who achieved 75% or higher. In 2018, they dropped down to 61.43%. That was 66th nationally, and there were only 7 teams around the country who are at 75% or higher. That was a thing that year, that they couldn't convert in the red zone. They were awesome in between the 20s, but then they got in the red zone and they were terrible. And then in 2019, they had their best year they've had under Ryan Day, and it's also the first year that he's the head coach, so he's not just a play caller anymore. 78.67%. That was 4th nationally, and they were one of 10 teams who were above 75%. In 2020, 63.64%. That was 57% nationally, and there were 12 teams that year who were of 75% or higher, and that's the most of any year since Ryan Day has gotten to Ohio State. In 2021, 64.41%. That was 45th nationally, but there were only 2 teams who were at 75% or higher. 2022, they flirted with it. 74.60%. That was 6th nationally, and there were 5 teams. All 5 teams ahead of them had 75% or higher. In 2023, 64%. There was 47th in the country, and there were 10 teams that year who were 75% or higher. And then last year, 75.81%. touchdowns in the red zone. That was 5th nationally, and they were one of 8 teams who accomplished that. And as I mentioned already, 65% so far this year. That's 62nd nationally. Is this a realistic expectation versus a goal that Ohio State is trying to achieve? Should we be holding them to that? And at the end of the year, they're at 71%, be going, shame on you, you failed.
I think it's a fairly reasonable goal, actually. You know, I was looking up 2024 stats through red zone conversions. Shout out CFB stats.
Yeah, I just gave it. 75.81% is where they were at.
Yeah, but there were 6 teams in college football that did that were 75% or higher. The 2 service academies, or 2 of the service academies, Navy and Army, Indiana, Nevada, Ohio State, Old Dominion, Georgia Southern. Actually, there were more than that.
There were 8.
There were 8. 2023, there were a handful of teams. There were 10.
I gave those numbers off.
No, so
and in 23.
Yeah, so it's like, but I'm just repeating that to say, like, you could realistically and should probably realistically have thoughts that Ohio State is in the top 10, in the top 6. This year, it's too hard to look at just because it's, so early in the year. Yeah, that's, I think, actually maybe a little bit more reasonable. Like we were kind of talking about it a little bit earlier. I think it's more reasonable than you think, especially when, you kind of consider what this team has offensively. I understand it's talent equated. If you have, I don't know, a team that's, Ohio, let's just use them because they were on the schedule, or a team, like Western Kentucky who was on the schedule, they're going to play more talent equated games to what they were. But like, even still, Ohio State has the talent advantage on pretty much, if not everybody, in college football when they have the balls. Them scoring 75% from that, scoring touchdowns, I don't think that that's unreasonable at all. And I don't think it's unreasonable at all for them to be, well over 90%. Last year's number 1 team was Old Dominion with 95% score percentage. If you're talking like an 75 to 80% touchdown conversion rate, and then the rest are field goals or most are field goals, and you're kind of up there at, hovering 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, like that should be where this team is at. And when he said it, we were talking about it. We're like, you know what? Maybe we should pump the brakes on this. And I don't think we were necessarily wrong to think that immediately. And then you kind of look at it and you go, you know what? This is where all the best offenses in the countries are. Why can't Ohio State hold itself to that standard?
Stefan, is this a realistic expectation? Or just a goal that it's a strive for that, but if they're within 7% of it, is that okay?
I think I lean with the latter. They're at 65 right now. Probably closer to 70, I think would be a success. I think if they hovered around 65 all year. Here's the one rebuttal though, and I know the stats aren't going to back it up well right now because they had some impressive numbers against Grambling and Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that a lot of those years where Ohio State had lower red zone touchdown percentages, they probably had a good amount of 50-yard touchdown passes and 40-yard touchdown passes with guys like Olave and Garrett Wilson and whatever it may be, right? So that is the one thing I would say is if your red zone touchdown percentage is going to be around 65, are you going to start taking some more shots on offense? You know, Washington ran a lot of too high safety, and that's difficult to do. I get it. But if that's how teams are going to counter and you're not going to get as many explosive scores, then your red zone percentage has to be better. So on the surface, from what we know this offense could do, 75% is a lofty number, right? And maybe more of a goal as opposed to like the bar. But if the explosive scores go down, then you got to make up for that somewhere. And that's when it's something that, like, this is a very cop-out answer. It's something that we're probably not going to be able to judge until like after the regular season ends. But if I look at the 2025 regular season and the amount of, let's say, 25 plus yard touchdowns, so we'll go outside the red zone. The amount of scores from outside the red zone is significantly lower than it was in years past. And I'm looking at Big Ten play. I'm not gonna count the non-conference games just because Grambling and Ohio shouldn't count. But then also, like, they played Texas this year, and some years they don't play as good of a team as Texas. So, like, just looking at Big Ten numbers, if the 25 plus yard scores are down, then yeah, you better be closer to that 75% in the red zone because you got to get these points from somewhere. And I want to talk percentages because possessions are down, plays are down, all that. Like the total, the counting numbers will probably be lower than what they were with Olave and Wilson, just because of the era of football. But era of football, as if it wasn't 5 years ago. Things have changed in the last 5 years. Percentage wise, if you're not scoring from far out, you better be making up for it when you're in the red zone.
I think if they're going to play as slow as they've been playing, then I agree with you.
Yeah.
Then they need to be converted because, again, these are plays per game right now for Ohio State from during Ryan Day's tenure. 75.1 in 2017, 82.4 in 2018. Those were 37th and 5th nationally in 2019. 78.6, that was 7th nationally. 2020, 73.9, 43rd nationally, and now they start dropping. 0.7 in 2021, that was 50th nationally. In 2022, 68.3, that was 93rd nationally. 2023, 66% plays per game, that was 93rd nationally. Last year, 62.8, that was 123rd nationally. And so far this year, 60.3 plays per game. That's 126 nationally out of 130-something FBS program. So they're near the bottom in the amount of plays they're running. And that is a combination of Ohio State is so good that when you play against them, it's probably not in your best interest to play up tempo unless you know you have the talent to keep up. So teams are going to play slower to eat up clock against Ohio State. But Ohio State is also eating up clock when it's playing its game. So if you are going to be in more situations where you're taking less shots, you're being less high up tempo, looking for explosive plays, to your point, Stefan, they have 14 plays of 20 plus yards, 10 plays of 30 plus yards, 9 plays of 40 plus yards, 3 plays of 50 plus yards, 2 plays of 60 plus yards, 1 play of 70 plus yards, and 1 play of 80 plus yards. And how many of those came against Grambling? Right, that's part of this math here is if you're gonna play this more methodical style because you're building towards something, then you can't get down to the 17-yard line against Washington and it's 4th and 1 and you don't convert because Nate Roberts missed a block. And so, which for me plays into the special teams part of it is some of this is the coaching part of it is how they're choosing to play. I think the personnel players part of it is whether or not they're executing. Because that's the thing, Ryan, you have to execute at a high level if you're going to have less opportunities to do it.
Yeah.
And how many, Brandon Inniss, you're not going to have but 3 punt returns a game. You can't fumble one away. You're only going to have 4 red zone trips a game. You can't miss a block to keep a drive alive on one of those, right? Julian saying it plays into why anytime he gets asked about Bo Jackson, ball security, taking care of the ball. Hey, Julian, don't put the ball in harm's way. The more he talks about that, the less it is for me this is a problem these guys have in practice. And it's like, no. You remember the first time you bought something with your own money? You know how much more and better you took care of it because it was your money? That's possessions. Possessions are money in college football. And 2 years ago, we decided to start making this the NFL, where you don't get a first down after the clock doesn't stop after every first down unless you're within 2 minutes, and we have a 2-minute warning, and everybody plays too high and just tries to eat up clock. So instead of 12 possessions per game, you get 8 possessions per game. So because of that, mistakes on special teams matter more. Mistakes, turnovers matter that much more. So I do not think Julian Sand has a turnover problem. He had 3 weird interceptions. Bo Jackson had a weird fumble out the back of the end zone. But I don't think they have when I hear Ryan Day saying that now, it's because, look, dude, they had 6 possessions on Saturday. You can't afford to turn the ball over when you're only getting 6 possessions. So that's the execution part of it for me, in terms of the offense isn't going to be but so explosive right now, so we have to take care of the football.
And, the other part of this too, like you were saying, like in talent equated games, what happens if you get another team, and Ohio State says, all right, we're, situations matter more and blah, blah, blah. And this keeps up with a team like Michigan, with a team like a Penn State, one of the, probably 2 of the most talented teams that they have left on their schedule. If you get to that point, both those teams are like, hey, we're cool with this game being 6 or 7 possessions each, like you said, and then, you fumble the ball. I mean, there's a reason why this has been a thing for hundreds of years. There's a reason why John Heisman once said that it was better to have died a small boy than fumble this football. Like, it's been a thing for a while that you turn the ball over, you lose games. And I think that's why, Ohio State is really just kind of honing in on this now. And I think, like, to a lesser extent, this is the Eddrick conversation as well, where it's like, hey, man, mistakes are going to kill us. Yeah. They might not kill us now, but they're going to kill us eventually. Think about, where Ohio State would be if somebody fumbles against Texas. It's, you're in that position where it's a close game. Texas is a yard away from tying it with 3 minutes left. What if they were a yard away from taking the lead, or they were winning that game because there's just all these different things that you could go to. And that is why I think it's the perfect time for Ryan Day to just kind of keep bashing this over the head.
So is the conclusion in all of this, Stefan, that if Ohio State just plays clean, nobody's going to beat them on their schedule?
Probably. And Arvell Reese and Caleb Downs are to thank for that.
Yeah. Arvell Reese is really good.
I saw him mocked recently at 21 overall. I imagine the Bears will pick before 21 overall. Don't let him get to 21 overall.
I don't know if I want to ban him to Chicago, though. Chicago's a lovely place. I just don't want... I don't want his career to die.
No. If you're a linebacker, you're gonna have a good time in Chicago.
No, what are you talking about? Lance Briggs, Ryan Urlacher, they've got the whole 85 Bears. They've got a storied linebacker history.
No, he's literally gonna win the Butkus Award.
I think he genuinely is gonna win the Butkus Award.
He's got a case.
No, who's playing better linebacker than him right now? I think he's genuinely going to win the Butkus. And there's a lot of football to be played. Damon Williams, he had a, and Ryan Day was even describing it. He had a run. Arvell Reese is just like, you sure you want to do this? And Damon's like, not after that. Oh, I think Arvell Reese's presence made Damon Williams like double think before he wanted to run for a lot of that game. I think he's going to win the Buckets. Right. I genuinely think he's going to win the Buckets Award, which would be great for us. Because
if only someone could have predicted that.
Shut up. All right. Anything else people want to bring up?
Go ahead, Stefan.
I think Ryan Day believes in Eddrick Houston still. We talked about his belief in Brandon Inniss. Mm-hmm. I think Ryan Day believes in Eddrick Houston still. It's kind of just becoming a tough love situation of Eddrick's balancing a million things, and he's in a role for the first time, and he's a sophomore in college, and it's still, a relatively new position. I think there's a lot of things that Eddrick is balancing, and it has not been a good season for him so far. It sounds like Ryan Day and everyone around Eddrick are still doing their part because I think they understand that he still has a massive role on this team, and they need him to be good.
Gillis, anything else you want to bring up?
Ryan Day didn't necessarily dismiss the idea of recruiting a fullback.
He also kind of did.
I was going to say, he threw in a handful of caveats to that.
He literally said, no, we're not bringing a fullback in here unless... I think there's a recruiting pod that's coming up, Andrew, and I think we can use that because I also loved the way he talked about the running back situation of...
You got to basically play receiver too.
It's like he called it a prerequisite now. And I do think there is a way to talk about Ohio State's recruiting efforts in terms of what they are looking for in a football player. And he mentioned Xavier Johnson, who was a former walk-on here who played running back, wide receiver. I think he played DB at one point, right? And you do that for walk-ons, you go all over the place. But then he eventually got on scholarship here, was a Blocko, a captain, and now he's in the NFL. And I do think I'm wondering who in Ohio State's recruiting class right now, and we don't have to talk about this in depth right now, but I wonder who is the best example of what you need from a football player, regardless of position. It's like, you can't just do one thing now. You got to do 12 things. And is there a guy like that in Ohio State's recruiting class right now, or a guy they're even recruiting right now who fits that billing of, I don't know what you are, but you're something and we're going to use you?
Yeah, and it's hard too, because it's like, okay, well, you're recruiting receiver as good as you are, and Keenan Bailey's got the tight end room in such a way where it's like, okay, like let's pretend you had just the most badass looking fullback in the world. You've got a dude who's got the neck roll, he's got the great face mask, he just looks like who's the fullback for the Chargers? Lorenzo Neal. Was that his name? Or like he looks like that. He looks like a Mike Allstott. He just looks like that. Okay, how much is he playing? And when you put him out on the field, is it worth it to have him on the field when you got Will Kazmarek, who's just as good? And is that drop off and time effort spent? Is it better to just say, you know what, hey, Nate Roberts, go do that because we think Nate Roberts is good? And like it is an interesting conversation. I did think Landis was the one who asked the question. I did think it was an interesting question because like, my ears certainly perked up when I heard the word fullback. It just, I think it's a fun conversation, but I don't know what the realistic possibility is in that future.
Yeah, but like it's the thing he used fullback to talk about. It's unless you are one of one doing one thing, you don't get to come here and just do one thing. I.e., Jeremiah Smith is such a good wide receiver that if he wasn't the best blocker when he got here, all right, man, put him on the field. He'll figure it out. And I don't think JJ was a good blocker in 2024. So what? I think he's a better blocker in 2025 because he's having normal progression and development as that. But he's so great at this one thing that it doesn't matter that there are other elements of his game that maybe lack. He can figure that out in the game versus having to figure it out on special teams or in practice. Looking at Ohio State's 2026 recruiting class right now, I think there is one dude who fits that build of you can just do this one thing and it's fine. And that's Chris Henry Jr. And that's because he's 6'6", 210 pounds, right? Even Bo Jackson, as elite as he might be as a running back, if he couldn't be a receiver, if he couldn't block and pass pro, they wouldn't be putting him on the field. So that's, the fullback thing, yeah, great. Okay, yeah, we're living in a world now where everybody's playing 12 personnel again and 22 personnel. So it's like, hey, you're going to go take this all the way back to 2002 and put a fullback out there? Sure. But I think the answer Ryan Day gave to that and to the running back thing were more about, if we're recruiting you, it's not just to do one thing. Even Sam Greer at 6'8", 315 pounds. That doesn't mean he's not going to play guard here at some point. Paris Johnson was a no-brainer first-round draft pick, and he played guard for a year. Their starting left tackle came here thinking he was going to be a guard or a center. So that for me, it's more of that, of like the makeup of the type of player you're looking for. Yes, he's super talented. Yes, we can project Sincere Johnson to be a Mike linebacker, but Arvell Reese isn't just a Mike linebacker. We can project Blaine Bradford and say, oh, he's a free safety. Okay, they're doing a bunch of stuff with Caleb Downs and Lorenzo Styles and Jalen McClain. So the versatility element to me is interested in when we break down this class of this guy's good at this, but how many different things can they do with him? Because the more they can do with you, the better chances you have of actually playing football for Ohio State. Kari Wilder might be an awesome pass rush guy, but if he sucks against the run, guess what he's not going to be doing when he gets to Ohio State? Playing football. And I think he can. I think Kari Wilder should be a 5-star. So, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to know why Will Kazmarek's playing so much and Max Clear isn't playing as much as you want, it's because Will Kazmarek's a better receiver than Max Clear is a blocker.
Yes. That is, yes. And you want to know why Brandon Inniss is still on the field as slot receiver, even though people were like, hey, well, I want to see Mylan Graham. Hey, I want to see Bryson Rogers. Because Brandon Inniss can do more. It's not just about what you can do with the ball in your hands. Brandon Inniss might get the ball 50 times this year. Maybe. He's going to play a lot more than 50 snaps this year. So that's an interesting revelation from a recruiting standpoint from Ryan Day of how they're looking at players.
Well, think about Red Square. You gotta be strategic with how you're sharing that money now. Like, we're not talking about just giving out a bunch of scholarships and saying, hey, devote one scholarship to a guy who's just going to play fullback for you. Like, you have to figure out, if we recruit a guy who's just going to play fullback, we have to pay him. And how much do you pay a guy that can just play fullback, as opposed to, hey, what if we just paid Nate Roberts a bit more and he can play tight end for us and play fullback?
Mm-hmm. Which is how you get back to, unless you are one of one on what you do, I think it becomes that much more difficult to end up at Ohio State as a recruit. Because
Juszczyk's a one-on-one example in San Francisco, and he does everything for them.
He does everything, literally.
You think Shanahan would use a fullback just to use a fullback? Like, he wants to get creative with Juszczyk.
Yeah. So unless your name is Chris Henry Jr., you need to know how to do a bunch of different things. Unless your name is JJ, you need to know how to do. And then who else is this? I know that Gabriel George guy who's from Tennessee, who's like the Canadian running back. He's probably a one-of-one situation. But those, again, there's one of those every recruiting class, and Ohio State's not always going to get that guy. So everybody else has to have some versatility. And Ryan Day's been great on Tuesday. I wish we would talk to the coordinators and the quarterback too on Tuesday, but Ryan Day has been very informative over the last couple of weeks here. And the first place we go when he gets informative is the text 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Again, today at noon, as you're listening to this, we're going live on YouTube. Again, we're going to be talking Ohio State's quarterback position and looking around the conference and seeing who are the 5 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and also comparing the Big Ten as a quarterback conference to some of the other conferences around college football. That's our big pot of the week. We'll go live on Wednesday. It'll also be in your feeds on Thursday if you can't join us. But try to. We have a good time there. 614-350-3315, a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis, I'm Stephen Means. Hopefully we see you guys on the live show. Talk to you later.